Welcome to LitRPG Tales. In this chapter, we dive into Lysander's origins in Aetherwind and his first encounter with the mysterious Echoes. The adventure begins now as we uncover the secrets of Eternum. Let's get started with Chapter 1, Born of Aetherwind. In the world of Eternum, there was no place quite like Aetherwind. Nestled atop the ruins of an ancient, forgotten civilization, this city was a dazzling blend of the old and the new. Towering spires, seemingly defying gravity, stretched toward the sky, their surfaces etched with glowing runes, remnants of an age long past. Between the towering buildings, floating platforms ferried people from one part of the city to another, gliding effortlessly in the soft light that illuminated the city day and night. The streets bustled with activity, yet there was an unusual tranquility here. Unlike other cities, where commerce and politics dominated, Aetherwind thrived on its pursuit of knowledge. Scholars in long robes hurried between libraries, laboratories, and archives, their minds ever focused on unraveling the mysteries of their fractured world. Here, learning was revered, and knowledge seekers from all over Eternum came to study echoes and the lost magic that once bound the world together. But beneath the surface of this intellectual haven, there was an unspoken tension. Echoes, ethereal fragments of memory and power, floated through the air like fireflies, silent yet ever present. They were both revered and feared. To those who understood their significance, they were gateways to ancient knowledge, holding the key to unraveling the mystery of the Echo Sundering, the cataclysmic event that had shattered the world. Yet to the untrained, echoes were dangerous, unpredictable forces capable of bringing madness to those who sought to control them. At the heart of this enigmatic city was a young scholar, Lysander. From an early age, he had been captivated by the echoes and the untold stories they carried. While others in Aetherwind revered the echoes from a distance, content to study them through careful observation, Lysander longed to do more. He wanted to understand them, to feel the magic they held within. Unlike many of his peers, Lysander was not afraid to push boundaries. He knew that the only way to unlock the true potential of the echoes and to discover what had caused the sundering was to venture into the unknown. Lysander's curiosity had led him to countless hours in Aetherwind's vast libraries, poring over ancient tomes and scrolls, searching for any hint that might explain the origin of the echoes. His modest home, tucked away in a quieter part of the city, reflected his thirst for knowledge. The shelves were packed with books, many of them worn and faded from years of use. Artifacts, both ancient and new, were scattered throughout the space, each one telling a different story of the world before the sundering. And yet, despite his collection, there was always more to learn. As Lysander walked through the streets of Aetherwind that day, the sky overhead was a blend of deep purples and oranges, remnants of the sundering's lasting effects. The air was thick with magic, and the city itself seemed to hum with an ancient energy. He paused for a moment on one of the floating platforms, gazing out at the horizon. Beyond the city's walls, the world was wild and broken. The once great civilizations of Eternum had fallen, leaving behind only echoes of their former glory, both literal and metaphorical. But Aetherwind remained, a beacon of knowledge in an otherwise shattered world. And Lysander, though still young, felt that his role in this city would be more than just that of a scholar. He could feel the pull of destiny, as if the echoes themselves were calling out to him, urging him to seek the truth. He wasn't entirely sure where his journey would take him, but one thing was certain: his time in Aetherwind was just the beginning. The thought of venturing beyond the city stirred something within him. There were stories, of course, tales of scholars and seekers who had left the safety of Aetherwind only to vanish without a trace. The world beyond was dangerous, filled with untamed echoes, ancient ruins, and creatures twisted by the sundering. And yet, despite the risks, Lysander knew that he couldn't stay here forever. To truly understand the echoes, he would have to leave the city and seek out the fragments of history hidden in the ruins of the old world. But for now, Aetherwind was his sanctuary, a place where he could continue his research and hone his skills. The city had always felt like home to him, its towering spires, its scholars, its air of mystery. And yet, as he gazed out at the horizon, Lysander couldn't help but feel that something was missing. Lysander returned to his modest home, nestled deep within the winding streets of Aetherwind. It was a quiet corner of the city, far from the bustling markets and towering academies, but filled with a serenity he cherished. His home was small, but it was packed with the knowledge he had spent his life gathering. Shelves lined the walls, filled with weathered books, scrolls, and ancient artifacts, all meticulously collected and categorized. The smell of parchment and ink filled the air, blending with the faint hum of magic that always lingered in Aetherwind. At the center of the room was a large desk, its surface cluttered with open books, half-written notes, and strange trinkets he had found over the years. An orb of soft, flickering light floated above the desk, casting a gentle glow that illuminated the various echoes he had collected. Some were small and barely visible, like faint whispers from the past, while others glowed brightly, their presence demanding attention. Lysander ran his hand over one of the echoes, feeling the faint pulse of energy it emitted. Each one was a fragment of history, a piece of a puzzle that had yet to be solved. They were remnants of a world that had existed before the Echo Sundering, and though they were often unpredictable, Lysander believed they held the key to understanding not only the past, but also the future of Eternum. He couldn't help but think of his parents as he examined the echoes. They had been scholars too, renowned throughout Aetherwind for their research on the ancient world and its mysteries. Their sudden disappearance during an expedition when Lysander was still a child had left a void in his life, one that he had tried to fill with knowledge. Their loss was not just a personal tragedy for Lysander, but also a professional one. They had been on the cusp of a great discovery about the echoes and the civilization that had once wielded them before they vanished. It was this connection to his parents, as much as his own insatiable curiosity, that had driven Lysander to become an echo seeker. He had devoted himself to understanding the echoes, hoping that by doing so, he might not only unlock the secrets of the past, but also uncover what had happened to his parents. And now, as he stood in his quiet home, surrounded by the artifacts and fragments of a lost world, he felt closer than ever to discovering the truth. Today, however, something felt different. Lysander's usual scholarly calm was replaced by a growing sense of urgency. The echo he had encountered earlier that day, its faint whisper and elusive energy, lingered in his thoughts. He had studied echoes for years, but this one had been different, more vivid, more alive. It had given him a glimpse into the past, a fleeting vision of a world that no longer existed. The image of towering structures crumbling beneath a darkened sky, of people fleeing from an unseen force, was burned into his mind. He knew he couldn't ignore this echo. It was calling to him, urging him to delve deeper, to seek out its source. Lysander had always been cautious in his research, never one to take unnecessary risks, but something about this echo stirred a sense of determination within him. He had to know more. Lysander pulled out one of his journals and began scribbling down the details of the echo. His notes were filled with questions. What event had this echo captured? Was it a memory of the Echo Sundering, or perhaps something older, something that had happened long before the cataclysmic event that had fractured Eternum? He wrote furiously, filling page after page with theories and ideas, but he knew that the answers wouldn't come from his books. No, the answers lay beyond the safety of Aetherwind, out in the wild and dangerous world that had been torn apart by the Echo Sundering. Lysander had spent years preparing for this moment, gathering knowledge, honing his skills, and learning all he could about the echoes. But the time for research was over. Now he would have to venture into the unknown, to follow the trail left by the echo and see where it led. As Lysander packed a small bag with supplies, he glanced around his home one last time. This place had been his refuge, a sanctuary of knowledge and safety. But he knew that he couldn't stay here forever. The echoes were calling to him, and he had no choice but to answer. With a determined look in his eyes, Lysander stepped out into the night, ready to begin his journey. With a determination that now bordered on obsession, Lysander made his way toward the outskirts of Aetherwind, drawn to the place where he had first encountered the mysterious echo. The city streets gradually gave way to ancient ruins, remnants of an older civilization that had once flourished long before the Echo Sundering had torn the world apart. The air was thick with energy, and the distant hum of echoes floated like whispers, invisible but ever-present. It was as though the past itself was trying to speak through the cracks in time. Lysander approached the ancient district carefully, his steps echoing against the worn stones beneath his feet. This part of Aetherwind was rarely visited by scholars, despite being the oldest section of the city, with its towering, weathered statues and crumbling pillars. The ruins had long been abandoned, considered too dangerous due to the lingering presence of powerful echoes. But for Lysander, this danger was exactly what he needed to face. The answers he sought lay buried in this forgotten part of the city. The echoes of past events were more palpable here, as if the very walls were alive with memories. Lysander had been here countless times before, yet today something was different. The air felt heavier, charged with an unseen force. He had always been careful around echoes, knowing that their energy could be unpredictable, even volatile. But now, a nagging feeling gnawed at him, an instinct that whatever this particular echo held, it was important, even dangerous. Still, the pull was irresistible. He reached the heart of the ruins, where the streets opened into a vast square, surrounded by towering remnants of ancient buildings. The ground in the center was fractured, deep cracks spider-webbing outward from a central point. It was there, amidst the rubble, that Lysander had first seen it, a faint shimmer in the air, like the remnants of a dream half remembered. It was barely visible now, but Lysander knew it was there. He could feel it in the pit of his stomach, a strange pull that whispered secrets to his mind. This was the echo he had found, his first real encounter with the strange, ghostly phenomena that had haunted Eternum since the Sundering. He approached cautiously, reaching out his hand, feeling the faint resistance in the air as his fingers drew near the invisible force. A flash of light flickered before his eyes, and suddenly the past rushed in. Images danced through Lysander's mind, blurry and distorted, like fragments of a forgotten dream. He saw fleeting glimpses of people long dead, their voices muffled and distant, their faces obscured by time. A city much like Aetherwind, but older, grander, sprawled before him. Its spires reached for the sky, gleaming in the sun, but then just as quickly the vision darkened. The sky above cracked open, and the earth trembled. People ran, screaming, as the very fabric of reality seemed to rip apart before their eyes. It was the Echo Sundering, the cataclysm that had shattered the world. The vision ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving Lysander breathless and shaken. His hand trembled as he pulled it away from the echo. He had experienced something similar before, fleeting glimpses of the past, but never with such intensity. The vision had been so vivid, so real, that for a moment he had felt as though he had been there, standing amidst the chaos of the Sundering itself. But there was more to it than just the vision. Lysander could feel it deep within him. Something had changed. He had touched the echo and come away with more than just a fleeting memory. He felt stronger, more aware. It was as if the echo had granted him a piece of its power, a fragment of the knowledge it held. This was no ordinary echo. Lysander stood for a moment, contemplating what had just happened. He had always suspected that echoes were more than just remnants of the past, more than just fleeting memories trapped in time, and now he had proof. This echo, this powerful remnant of the Sundering, had given him something, a new understanding, a deeper connection to the forces that had shaped Eternum. But this realization came with a heavy weight. If echoes held this kind of power, what else could they do? How dangerous could they be in the wrong hands? And more importantly, what had caused the Sundering in the first place? These questions lingered in Lysander's mind, adding to the ever-growing list of mysteries he needed to solve. For now, however, he knew one thing for certain. The echoes were the key to understanding the past, and perhaps the future of Eternum. And if he was to uncover the truth behind the Sundering, he would need to learn to harness their power. With a deep breath, Lysander turned away from the ruins and began his walk back toward the city. His journey was just beginning. As Lysander returned to the heart of Aetherwind, his thoughts were consumed by the echo he had encountered. The vision it had granted was unlike anything he had experienced before, and its power lingered, humming beneath his skin like an untapped well of energy. He had read of such things in the ancient texts scattered throughout the city's libraries, but to experience it firsthand was something entirely different. Lysander couldn't help but feel that this was the beginning of something far greater than he had anticipated. His feet carried him instinctively toward the grand library of Aetherwind, a towering structure that dominated the skyline with its shimmering spires and floating platforms. It was a place he had visited countless times in search of knowledge, but today he hoped to find answers. Answers about the echoes, about the vision, and perhaps even about the sundering itself. The library was a labyrinth of stone and magic, its walls etched with glowing symbols that pulsed softly with every step. The air inside was thick with the scent of old parchment and dust, a testament to the centuries of knowledge stored within. Scholars and echo-seekers moved silently between the towering shelves, their robes whispering as they passed. Lysander nodded in greeting to a few familiar faces, but wasted no time in making his way to the lower levels, where the most ancient and obscure tomes were kept. Down in the belly of the library, the air was cooler, the light dimmer. This was where the oldest texts were stored, written by those who had lived before the sundering. Many of these volumes were fragile, their pages brittle with age, but Lysander knew that within these crumbling books lay the secrets of Eternum's past. He stopped in front of an old wooden door, its surface marked with ancient runes that glowed faintly in the dark. This was the restricted section, where only a select few scholars were permitted to enter. But Lysander had long earned the trust of the library's curators, and with a whispered incantation, the door creaked open, revealing a narrow stairway that led deeper into the archives. The deeper Lysander ventured, the quieter the library became, until the only sounds were the soft crackle of the torches lining the walls and the steady rhythm of his own footsteps. He reached the bottom of the stairwell and found himself in a small, dimly lit chamber filled with ancient tomes and scrolls. Dust hung thick in the air, undisturbed by the passage of time. Lysander knew exactly where to look. He crossed the room to a heavy, iron-bound tome that rested on a pedestal in the center of the chamber. The book was old, older than Aetherwind itself, if the legends were to be believed. Its pages were yellowed and fragile, but the words within were said to hold the history of Eternum, written by the very scholars who had witnessed the echo sundering. With trembling hands, Lysander opened the tome. The first few pages were filled with intricate illustrations of a world that no longer existed, a world of peace and prosperity, where the echoes were used as tools of creation rather than destruction. But as he turned the pages, the images grew darker, more chaotic. He saw visions of the sky cracking open, of the earth splitting apart, and of the very fabric of reality beginning to unravel. It was the sundering, depicted in vivid detail, just as Lysander had seen it in his vision. His heart raced as he continued to read, his eyes darting over the faded text. The scholars who had written this book had known about the sundering before it happened. They had seen the signs, the cracks in reality, the disturbances in the echoes, but they had been powerless to stop it. Lysander's breath caught in his throat as he reached the final pages of the tome. There, scrawled in a shaky hand, were the last words of the scholars who had witnessed the end of their world. The echoes are the key. Only through understanding them can we hope to rebuild what was lost. The echoes were the key. Lysander had suspected as much, but seeing it written here, in the words of those who had lived through the sundering, solidified his resolve. He had to understand the echoes, to master them if he was to uncover the truth behind the sundering. And he had to do it before the world was torn apart once again. Lysander's hands trembled slightly as he closed the ancient tome. The words within had confirmed his deepest suspicions. The echoes were far more than fragments of power. They were the very key to understanding the sundering, the devastating event that had torn Eternum apart. For centuries, scholars had tried to unlock their mysteries, but few had ventured far enough to risk uncovering the truths that could reshape the world. Lysander now felt the weight of this responsibility on his shoulders. He rose from his chair, the soft crackling of the torches illuminating the musty room. His mind was racing, filled with questions, possibilities, and a growing determination to uncover what had been hidden for so long. It wasn't enough to merely study the echoes. He had to understand them, to control them, and to harness the power they contained. For the first time, Lysander knew that his life's work had a much grander purpose. But he also knew he couldn't do it alone. Despite his keen intellect and insatiable curiosity, the Echoes were unpredictable, their energy vast and untamed. He needed guidance, mentorship, and resources that went beyond the city of Aetherwind. His thoughts turned to the wider world beyond the city's boundaries, a world he had glimpsed only through books and hearsay, a world filled with untold dangers, ancient ruins, and forgotten echoes waiting to be found. For too long, the scholars of Aetherwind had been content to remain within the city's walls, sifting through centuries-old texts and avoiding the risks that came with direct exploration. Lysander, however, had never shared that reluctance. If the Echoes were the key to preventing another sundering, or even reversing the damage that had already been done, then he would be the one to uncover their secrets. His first step would be to leave Aetherwind and embark on a quest beyond the safety of the city's walls. The idea both thrilled and terrified him. The ancient ruins that surrounded Aetherwind were said to be haunted by echoes, and few dared to venture into them without a seasoned echo seeker by their side. But Lysander's thirst for knowledge was stronger than his fear. His mind drifted to stories he had heard, whispers of a powerful echo hidden deep within the ruins of a forgotten civilization, an echo that, if found, could provide him with the answers he sought. The prospect was too tantalizing to ignore. He had to find it. He would need supplies, of course, food, water, and tools to aid him in his journey. But more than that, he needed knowledge. Maps of the area surrounding Aetherwind, accounts of those who had ventured into the ruins before him, and any fragments of information that could help him locate the elusive echo. The library would be his first stop. It was late, but Lysander knew the curators well, and they would not refuse him access to the maps and ancient texts he needed. With a newfound sense of purpose, he gathered his things, slipped on his traveling cloak, and made his way through the narrow streets of Aetherwind toward the Grand Library. As he walked, the city's familiar sights and sounds washed over him, the soft hum of echoes floating in the air, the distant conversations of scholars discussing their latest findings, the flickering glow of enchanted lanterns lighting the streets. Aetherwind had been his home for as long as he could remember, but for the first time he felt a pull toward the unknown, an irresistible urge to leave the city behind and discover what lay beyond its walls. Upon reaching the library, Lysander was greeted by the sight of towering shelves filled with books, scrolls, and ancient artifacts. He moved quickly, scanning the shelves for anything that could aid him in his quest. His fingers brushed over old maps and journals, each one offering glimpses of long-forgotten journeys and the echoes that had been encountered along the way. One map in particular caught his eye. It was worn and faded, its edges frayed from years of use, but the markings were clear enough. It depicted a dense forest just beyond the outskirts of Aetherwind, with a small, almost imperceptible symbol indicating the location of an ancient ruin. Lysander's heart raced as he studied it. This was it, the place where the echo he sought could be found. Armed with the map and a handful of ancient texts describing the ruins, Lysander felt a surge of excitement. The journey ahead would be dangerous, but he was ready. His mind was already racing with thoughts of the powerful echo that awaited him and the untold knowledge it could provide. Leaving the library, Lysander knew that this quest would mark the beginning of a new chapter in his life. He had spent years studying the echoes, reading about them, and experimenting with their power in controlled settings. But now he was stepping into the unknown, guided only by his curiosity and determination. As he made his way back to his modest home, Lysander felt a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. His journey had only just begun, and the answers he sought were closer than ever before. Thanks for watching this chapter of LitRPG Tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next chapter of this epic adventure. See you next time.